All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the special meeting of the Council of the Town of Bladensburg for Monday, June 21st. We have a brief but robust agenda for tonight. First, again, want to call the meeting to order and then ask for a motion to approve tonight's agenda, which consists of, under old business, our ordinance 04-2021 for the second and final reading of our budget, setting forth our real property tax as well as adopting the budget. Second item under old business, our phone system purchase, and then under new business, the Juneteenth holiday. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Lundy. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Rout. Any discussion? Hearing
Yes.
none. Sorry, Councilmember Rout.
Yes, I would like to add an update as it relates to the grants, so we can provide that update to the public. I would like that addition to be added to the agenda.
Councilmember Rout, thank you for that update. Note that would be item C under old business. At this time, that completes the discussion. If I hear no other comments, and we'll call for the vote. All in favor, let it be known by the saying of aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? The ayes have it. Thank you so much. At this time, I'll turn it over to our town administrator, Mr. Bob McGrory, for agenda item A and conducting the second reading of the budget ordinance and real estate property tax.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. It's nice to be here and to see those of you in person and online. I see Councilmember Blunt through Zoom as well. And it's my great pleasure to be here in person in the town of Bladensburg for my first meeting as your town administrator. With that, I will read the ordinance 04-2021, an ordinance to levy the real property and personal property tax rates and appropriate and adopt the operating budget of the mayor and town council of Bladensburg for the 2022 fiscal year of July 1, 2021 through June 30, 2022. Be it enacted and ordained by the mayor and town council of Bladensburg that pursuant to the authority contained in Article 501 of the Charter of the town of Bladensburg, the town budget for the fiscal year 2022 is attached hereto. And be it further enacted and ordained by the mayor and town council of Bladensburg that the real property tax levy for the fiscal year commencing July 1, 2021 be, and the same is hereby set at 0.74 cents dollars per $100 of full value assessment on all taxable real property located within the corporate limits of the town of Bladensburg. And be it further enacted and ordained by the mayor and town council of Bladensburg that the tax levy be, and the same is hereby set at $2.09 per $100 of full value assessment on all taxable personal property located within the corporate limits of the town of Bladensburg. And be it further enacted and ordained by the mayor and town council of Bladensburg that the general operating budget for fiscal year 2022 as attached be and is hereby adopted. And be it further enacted and ordained that upon adoption of this ordinance, the same shall be authenticated by the signature of the mayor and the town clerk to be recorded among the town books kept for that purpose. And be it further ordained that this ordinance shall be effective on the first day of July 2021. The requirement for reading this ordinance at two separate meetings of the mayor and council was fulfilled on May 10th, 2021 and June 14th, 2021. Introduced by the mayor and town council of the town of Bladensburg at a regular meeting on May 10th, 2021, and thereafter this ordinance was prominently posted in town hall and available for inspection by the public. Adopted at this regular meeting of June 21st, 2021, by order of the mayor and town council. And there is a proposal before you to amend this to update the name of the acting town clerk, which would be me now that I'm the town administrator, and to also change the date of second reading from the 14th to today's date, the 21st. So, Mayor, if you'd like, I can go through the changes very briefly that were inputted into the budget since the last version that was presented to the council, and I can run through those by line item if you wish.
Could you please?
Yes.
Thank you.
So the mayor and council's professional development budget was increased by $5,000. The administrator's budget line item, in the mayor and council budget, that was line 6141. The administrator's budget, the following three line items were updated. 6110 tuition was decreased by $6,000. 6139 professional development was decreased by $2,500. And 6260 transportation was decreased by $10,000. And those new numbers then would be 6110 would be $1,000, 6139 would be $2,500, and 6260 would be $20,000. The clerk.
Mr. McGrory,
Yes.
Mr. McGrory, before you move on, I do want to call out that we will need to have a motion and make sure the council is aware. I believe Councilmember Blunt did have an update to the transportation line item 6260, and just want to put a pin there so we can come back to that.
Thank you. Yes, she did request that that be increased by $5,000 from the amount that's currently listed. I apologize due to a miscommunication on my part. She is not attending today, but is participating by Zoom. So I appreciate if the council could react to her request for a change of that line item.
Mayor James?
Councilmember Rout?
I move to increase under the administrator line item 6260 from $20,000 to $25,000.
So moved. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Lundy. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, let it be known by the saying of aye.
Aye.
Any nays? The ayes have it. Thank you so much. And thank you, Councilmember Blunt, for your patience.
Thank you, Mayor. Now turning to the clerk's budget, the following four line items were changed. 6140 professional development was increased by $7,000, the new amount being $11,000. 6570 equipment lease was increased by $2,500, the new amount being $8,000. 6850 office supplies was increased by $4,000 to the new amount of $10,000, and 6855 postage was increased by the amount of $2,000 to a new amount of $4,000. Turning to the finance department.
Mayor, I have a question.
Yep.
Mr. McGrory, I'm sorry, one moment. We're going to pause before we move on to the next budget. Councilmember Lundy.
Thank you. And just for clarification, under clerk for 6140, should that be the $7,000 for the tuition reimbursement versus professional development line item? Because we asked for that it be tuition reimbursement across the board.
So,
Because there's a difference between tuition reimbursement and professional development. So if I'm not mistaken, it's supposed to be for tuition reimbursement, not professional development.
well, I'll just opine, and again, please bear with me because I'm new. In as much as these expenditures are within my authority, in that this employee in particular reports to me, this whole section of the budget now is without a clerk, so I would be the one administering that. I'll make that observation first. Secondly, we were adapting to both the verbal guidance provided by the council at the last meeting and written input from a member of the council that was attempting to characterize that. And so I believe that number is based on what we were provided. And third, I'll just say that in my experience, and I'm a former training and development coordinator at an institution with 2,500 employees, and we, both tuition reimbursement and professional development funding, in my mind, are somewhat interchangeable in that they all lead to employees being better trained to serve the town. So in as much as we would have flexibility to move among those line items with the discretion that I believe I already have within the budget, I would be happy to move those depending on the employee's needs and with the consent of the council. So,
All right, thank you so much.
you're welcome.
And Mr. McGrory, just to add on to that, I think the consensus from the council was just to be consistent so that in each department, there was professional development called out versus the tuition reimbursement. That way it gives us a tracking, since this is the first time we're providing dollars for each department, to see is the tuition reimbursement even being utilized in this area so we can budget accordingly for that versus your class through MML or a class through, another professional organization. So that was the thought process behind it, just so we could be clear and know how it's used, see how it's sort of tracking on that annual basis as we come back to the budget process next year. So I agree, Councilmember Lundy. I think it should just be separated out, if you wouldn't mind, just so it can be clear.
Thank you for that clarification, and I'll
That's probably something I should have caught, because as Mr. McGorry said, professional development, when we haven't had tuition reimbursements and those, it kind of fell down into that professional development because I didn't catch up there in the tuition reimbursement, so.
There were a lot of changes, Mr. Tonelli, so don't feel bad. It's okay. It's easier for us to pick them out because we weren't looking at the numbers probably as closely. But I just want to make sure from Councilmember Lundy, am I stating that the way that you recalled as
Yes.
well? Okay, Councilmember Rout and Councilmember Mendoza?
Mayor James, may I make a motion?
Okay. Yes, Councilmember Rout?
I move to decrease the professional development line item 6140 back down to $4,000.
Is there a second on the motion by Councilmember Rout to decrease the professional development dollars under the town clerk budget, line item 6142, the original amount of $4,000?
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Lundy. Any discussion? I think we clarified it, but with that, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, let it be known by the saying of aye. Aye. Any nays? The ayes have it. Thank you so much. Thank you again, team, for calling that out. And so now what we want to do, Mr. McGorry, to also further support that is I'll ask for a motion adding tuition reimbursement under the town clerk budget. So may I have a motion to add the $3,000 to tuition reimbursement for the town clerk budget?
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Lundy. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Mendoza. Any further discussion?
Yes.
Councilmember Rout?
Yes, and looking at the town clerk budget, the final FY22 draft, there is no line item for tuition. So that was I was going to make another motion. I would like to move to amend the town clerk budget and add a line 6130 for tuition reimbursement.
So moved.
I'm sorry, it's 6110, Councilmember.
I'm sorry, 6110.
All right.
So
So moved.
So the motion is on the table, and now we have a motion to amend the original motion. Moved by Councilmember Rout, seconded by Councilmember Lundy. All in favor, let it be known by the saying of aye. Aye. Any nays? The ayes have it. And now, Mr. McGray, I don't want to lose track of the original motion to add in $3,000
Yes.
under tuition reimbursement, line item 6110 for the clerk budget. Is there, so we have a motion, we have a second. We had discussion, which included the amendment to the motion, so I'll now call for the vote. All in favor, let it be known by the saying of aye.
Aye.
Any nays? The ayes have it. Thank you so much. Mr. Tonelli?
6110
Can you
goes up.
summarize this real quick?
Yes, so, yeah,
I'm
they're
sorry.
fast
wanted-
moving.
yeah, okay.
No problem. So we are
Decreased
still
it.
under the town clerk budget, and we had, I'm sticking with the original motion first, a motion to reduce the professional development line item to $4,000.
Which decreased at $7,000,
Correct.
okay?
So now the second motion was to add line item 6110 for tuition reimbursement. I'm sorry, I got it wrong. The second motion was to add $3,000 to the town clerk budget. That motion was amended to add line item 6110 to the town clerk budget because we couldn't add the dollar amount without adding it to a specific line item. So that's why we amended the motion to make sure the 3,000 is going to the right line item. I can give you my notes after if it's easier.
So the net is town clerk budget decreased $4,000.
It stays the same
Stays the
net.
same.
So 4,000 under professional development, 3,000 under tuition reimbursement. I'm sorry, did we get, yeah, 4,000 Yeah.
Clark?
So it started with 6140 in the version provided.
Oh, you're
Has
right. Our total was
$11,000 in it.
11,000.
Yeah,
So
You
that number,
subtracted 7 and then added back in 4. So
that's right. So we need
or added
to,
back in 3. I'm sorry. So there's still a
yes.
Yeah, so the town clerk budget decreased by a net of $4,000. 11 was taken out. I'm sorry, it was 11, back down to 4, so that decreased 7, added back in 3,000. So now we're at a net of 4,000 savings. Follow me?
Yes.
Okay, everybody, Councilmember Out?
So 7 goes to professional development and 3 goes to tuition reimbursement.
No, we did, the
If I
motion,
understand-
I think we need to amend that motion
I think you
because
do.
we only added in $3,000 and it should have been 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, it should have been 7,000 to get
Correct.
back to 11 and the 4K. So, correct me on the Robert's Rule of Orders. I can't do it. I need someone to amend, yes, on, if we take a new motion, it's on the same item though. So Robert's Rule of Order, we need to amend the
so
original.
someone who didn't make the prior motion could continue to make a new motion to adjust the amount further.
To 7,000
So if
for tuition reimbursement.
you want to have no net change to the clerk's budget, which is what I perceive to be the case.
Right.
And I believe you want to end up with 4,000 in the professional development and 7,000 in the tuition. So if that's correct, I would suggest that Councilmember Mendoza could make a motion to add $4,000 to line 6110 in the town clerk's budget.
To make it 7,000.
I make a motion that we add 3,000? 3,000 to the.
So we'd add 4.
4,000 to the 6110 line item for the clerk's budget.
So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Rout. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, let it be known by the saying of aye.
Aye.
Any nays? The ayes have it. Thank you for catching that so that we didn't short that budget, given the number of people in that department. Okay, so Mr. McGrory, that takes us through town clerk. I'll turn it back over to you to walk us through finance.
Okay, and finance, the only change was to reduce line 6110 by $1,700 to a new amount of $2,500. Public Works, there was a change to line 6,000 for compensation to reduce that amount by $5,966 to a new amount of $523,372. And that was to reflect the position change from a foreman position to a laborer position. And then there was a motion to reduce line 6750, the trash contract, by $20,000 to a new amount of $180,000. So those were the changes that we
Mayor
had
James, I have-
received and incorporated into the current draft that you have in front of you.
Thank you for that summary, Mr. McGrory. Councilmember Lundy, you had a question?
Yes, okay, so I'm looking at the budget for Public Works.
Yep.
And so I do see that just, correct me if I'm wrong, I do see that the 6110, it's included, so it's included in that, in the 1,700. The 7,000 is,
Public Works, line 6,
I see it on there for 20, but is it reflected in here? It is?
no,
I see
because
it on the-
there was no change to that from what was initially proposed and presented to you
Oh, it
last
was
Monday.
okay. It was okay.
Yeah.
Got you.
The
Okay.
only thing on this summary sheet that I provided were the changes
Changes.
since last Monday until the version you have in front of you
Okay,
today.
all right. Thank you so much for that clarification.
You're welcome.
Thank you for that question, Councilmember Lundy. Councilmember Rout?
Yes. Thank you so much, Mayor James. This was, I would like to make a motion to the public safety budget. I move to increase the salary for the 24 uniformed officers by 2%.
And Councilmember Rao, are you referring to regular paid line items 6010 or just 6,000 in general?
So 610, under 6,000, under compensation, there are two groups. There's regular pay for 24 uniformed officers. I'm specifically speaking to the 24 uniformed officers portion of 6010 regular pay.
Thank you. Is there a second?
So moved.
All right, seconded by Councilmember Lundy. Any further discussion?
Yes, Mayor James.
Councilmember Rao.
So the discussion was to, I had a conversation because at the last budget meeting, Chief shared that the purpose of some of the capital outlay is to really retain our officers. In addition to, we have a lot of Impalas that are really just dying. There's $1,500 costs every now and again, and we have to do something to retain our officers. And so in speaking with Chief Collington, I said, well, I'm just trying to just convey our conversation, Chief Collington, so please correct me if I'm wrong when I'm done. But I said, well, we've been purchasing new vehicles. I know for this budget cycle, last budget cycle, we purchased new vehicles, and we're still losing some of our finest Bladensburg police officers. What is it? And so, we talked, and I said, I think we need to look at our salary. We need to put the money in their pockets. We can't keep enticing our officers with, it's nice to drive around in a really nice, car. They do a lot of their works in their car. But we have to do something more, and the time is now. We're losing our officers. I was really, really sad to hear officers go into other counties, and we have to remain competitive with other jurisdictions, other counties, and the way we do that is we increase their salary. We shouldn't have to, yes, they need the best items to serve our town and our residents and our businesses, but we also need to think about them, their emotional well-being. They shouldn't have to work a part-time job after they get off to keep up and have family. These officers, they have kids, they have family members, where a lot of them are the only ones that work in their family, and we need to start looking at their compensation. So that's why I'm proposing this today.
Thank you, Councilmember Rao. Chief, would you like to add some more background to the matter on the table at the moment?
Yes, I could chime in, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilmember Rao, for raising that very important issue. Good afternoon, council, community, colleagues, and I'd just like to say, it is assuring to us as public safety who our men and women come to work every day, and they do the best job that they can for this community. And it's only fair that we look out for our public safety staff who come to work every day, who've been coming to work since the pandemic. And Councilmember Rao, she's 100% correct. We are losing our officers, and it's costing the town thousands of dollars for the pre-employment phase of it, for the recruitment phase of it, outfitting them, training them. So it's really costing the town. And on top of all of that, when we lose our senior staff, then we have a department of young, inexperienced police officers in town. So we do need to come up with a incentive to retain our good, qualified police officers who really do enjoy working here. And I'll say as a chief, it really disturbs me that when I have good officers leave and they come and it's hard for them to present me with a letter of resignation because of the level of respect, but two, that they really don't want to leave. But as those comments that were made by Councilmember Rao, a lot of them come here single with nothing, end up buying cars, buying houses, getting married, having families. and just the cost of living. And then when they look across outside of Bladensburg and see the other competitive agencies that are, hiring and then they're paying more. So, they go there for those reasons, financial responsibilities, not that they're unhappy being here. And I just want to say thank you to the council for, considering, that we need to retain our good officers. And it speaks volumes to see that our council have stepped up and want to help retain good officers in our community. Because when you bring in new officers, and I'll say this last piece, you bring in new officers, they know nothing about the community. When you have officers been here 8, 9 years, have developed relationships, have watched residents' kids grow up, we don't want to lose them. So I definitely thank you, Councilmember Ralph, for bringing that up.
Thank you for that, Chief, and you touched on it at the end, but the one thing I was going to add to it, in addition to thanking Councilmember Rao for coming up with a compromise, because yes, we know that we have a vehicle replacement plan for the police department. We know that these Impalas are aging, and we need to get them completely out of our fleet. But in speaking with officers directly recently, I understand everything that you all are saying. Pay is of concern. They're not leaving because they don't like it here. It's a matter of competition. And I think we all agree, which is wonderful, that we have to come up with a better retention policy to not just attract these new officers, but to really retain the best of the best. And so if we can gradually increase that floor of where we're bringing them in to make it more attractive, they'll stay, because the reality is some of the more mature officers understand it's not worth me going somewhere making $10,000 more if I hate it there, because the stress on me, the lack of support from the leadership, it's going to take a physical and emotional toll on me. So anything we can do, to help them stay here, to still advance within their career with the career promotional opportunities, just know, and you all correct me if I'm wrong, but you have our support 100% in doing that, because without a safe community, we have nothing. And so we want to keep these officers here. And to the point about relationships, we've worked so hard to build strong relationships with our community that we can't afford to keep losing the people that have those bonds. The ones who everyone can feel comfortable and safe calling in an emergency, because not every community has that sort of community relationship with the residents. So again, Councilmember Rao and Chief, thank you all for talking this through. Thank you, Councilmember, for coming up with this recommendation. If there's no other discussion, I'll ask for the vote. All in favor? Sorry, Mr. McGrory? Yes.
So, Councilmember, and I appreciated you sending me this on Friday as a heads up for us to talk about the budget implications of this. And I just want to offer a couple quick comments. One, as the brand new Chief Personnel Officer, I'm very supportive of anything we can do to increase our ability to recruit and retain top quality officers. So I think this is going to be very helpful in that regard. Mr. Tonelli and I were talking about the financial implications of this motion, and I would offer two comments. One is I do want to make sure that the budget is adopted. The topic at hand is the budget and the implications of this for the budget, because commingled in that line item are civilian and sworn officer salaries. And so I'd like the opportunity to come back next meeting, hearing you loud and clear, and though you haven't yet taken a vote, if I hear the consensus of the council on this, I would like to come back with a report from the personnel officer saying, here's how we intend to implement this. And again, in speaking with the treasurer about this, we believe that because of the number of vacant positions in the department, we may be able to accommodate this without actually changing the numbers that are proposed in the budget, and still implement that retroactive to the start of the fiscal year. So that I just wanted to offer those comments. Since there isn't a number attached to the motion, that would be a way we could move forward with that. Thank you.
And Mr. McGrory, before I go to Councilmember Rao, I do just want to clarify, it is only for the 24 sworn officers, and that was part of the motion, so not civilian staff, to your point. So I just wanted to make sure that we called that out exactly who we're talking about here. Councilmember Rao.
Thank you, Mayor James. And So I wanted to respond because I wanted to provide justification. It's not that we don't care about the civilian officers or even the staff that are of leadership. Well, they're still sworn, right? Okay. But the other officers and the code enforcement, it's not like we don't care about them, but particularly we have high turnover for our sworn police officers. And so there are going to be some other motions that I'm going to bring. And just as a compromise, as Mayor James shared, Chief and I had discussed this on Friday, since I was the maker of the other motions that will be following. So this in particular is for the 24 sworn officers, but I welcome the presentation because we do need to look at how we're going to retain our employees, because I brag around the state of Maryland when I meet people as I'm new. We have a lot of great employees. Like, our employees are phenomenal, and they work really, really hard for our residents and our businesses, and I think the town council recognizes that. So it's not to leave anyone out, but in particular, this particular group, it's just high turnover.
Understood. Yep, and agreed.
And just to follow up on that too, I do think it's important because it's just like being a parent. And some children say, oh, you always favor these kids and you never do anything for me, or the middle, I don't want anyone to have the middle child syndrome as far as our other departments go. And so I think having you on, Mr. McGrory, will also give us the opportunity to do some sort of competitive salary surveys so that we can also look into our salaries competitive across the board. This is just a start on trying to get, as a town, our salaries to be more competitive. We're starting where we're bleeding right now, but I think we definitely need to also gather data on the other positions so we understand this time next year, or at whatever agreed upon time we get to, do we need to be looking at the other positions as well, public works, code enforcement, all the ones you named, and then some. So again, appreciate you being willing to put the presentation together to bring back for us, and just know we want to take care of all of our staff, because when you have people across the board in public works and code enforcement who know the community, they've been here for a while, that speaks volumes. The residents, again, they have a certain comfort level in communicating and sharing information, and even volunteering and doing other things, getting involved in our committees and other things that really help foster a greater sense of community. So just want to call that out as well before we move forward. But I do believe we had gotten almost to the point of a vote, so if there's no further comment, I will call for the vote. All in favor, let it be known by the saying of aye. Aye. Any nays? The ayes have it. Thank you all. So Mr. McGrory, the next item on the agenda was the phone system update.
I had something else for public safety.
Just make sure.
Oh, sorry, Mr. McGrory, before we move on, Councilmember Rout.
Yes. In the public safety line item, I would like to reduce line item 6971, capital outlay, from 3 vehicles outfitted at $50,000 each down to 2 vehicles outfitted at $50,000. So that would reduce that line item to 110.
Is there a second on the motion? So that was moved by Councilmember Rout and seconded by Councilmember Lundy. Any discussion?
Yes.
Councilmember Rout?
So this was what I was trying to ask for before, and we got on the discussion of capital outlay. We got to do something. And so at this time, we're only going to outfit 2 vehicles, and we're going to shift those dollars to the salary for those 24 uniform officers, just so that everyone listening in at home can understand why we're reducing that capital outlay from 3 to 2. You're back.
Thank you for that. I'll now call for the vote. All in favor, let it be known by the saying of aye.
Aye.
Any nays? The ayes have it. Thank you so much. So at this time, Mr. McGrory, if you could take us through the phone system purchase.
Okay, thank you. I believe the discussion last meeting was was this action item, which staff deems pretty critical to our operations, and I think the chief has some pretty contemporaneous information about that.
I had another line item, and we keep moving, and I put them in writing, so I'm not understanding why we keep like trying to move forward.
So I'm going off of this document here. Are you looking at something else?
I'm looking at my email that I sent on Friday with outlining the other proposed item that I wanted to add to the public safety budget.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the
Okay.
changes that came through
I would like to make another motion, please.
Councilmember Rout.
Thank you, Mayor James. I would like to propose $36,000 for a software, I'm sorry, it's not 36.
I think 27 was the number
Thank
you and I
you.
discussed.
20, I would like to add, now this is a question though. I think I'm gonna put it where I think it belongs. All right. I would like to add $27,000 to line item 6460, software contract, for the purposes of purchasing and procuring a code enforcement software that will be selected by the town administrator and Chief Collington.
Is there a second on the motion to add $27,000 for software
Councilmember Rao.
for 6460?
Before you get a second, just to perfect the motion, is that like an upfront cost or is that going to be an annual cost because it depends?
An annual cost.
Annual cost?
Yes.
Okay, that's fine then, yes.
Yeah.
Is there a second on the motion?
Seconded.
Seconded by Councilmember Lundy. Any further discussion?
Yes, I do.
And I'm gonna also add some discussion here. My biggest concern is that's a huge price tag, $27,000 for this type of software. I believe one of the directors had mentioned there was a ticketing system that our IT firm uses, and you might be able to kind of give us a scale, because again, that is a huge amount for software. So I just wanted to ask comparable, what does the ticketing system, for example, cost for our network provider, an IT provider? Does anyone have a ballpark figure? Chief?
Mayor, I did ask our IT if they can provide us with some background information on it. They will be here tomorrow, so hopefully they will have that information, what the cost. They use the service ticketing software, and they should be providing that to us tomorrow.
Thank you, Chief.
did have some
Unfortunately, since we
discussion.
have to adopt the budget tonight, it'll be too late at that point. But again, that number seems a bit large. Do you know roughly what we pay for our IT services on a monthly basis?
It's like $2,400 a month.
So if we're paying $2,400, and I'm just comparing, for all of our network capabilities and all of our email systems for almost 50 employees
With the email system, I'd say roughly around $30,000.
annually?
Yes, yeah, for the IT support and also for the email. The email is minor because we have it on rack space. I mean, it's $100 a month or something. I mean, it's pretty minor.
Yeah,
So-
the email services, rack
Yeah.
space is about $87
Okay.
a month.
So
But that's-
it's under 30.
Right, and that's why I'm asking, because again, that seems pretty high to me, so I was just trying to get a comparison. Councilmember Rao, over
Thank
to
you
you.
so much, Mayor James. So at the last town council meeting, I presented the specs as it relates to this system that was presented before while we were in the state of emergency, and we tried to get this cost paid for by COVID relief dollars. Unfortunately, it was denied by the county because they didn't feel at that time that the code enforcement software was a software that would be used for the purposes of responding to the public health emergency. There are other software options out there, which is why I didn't put a tag or a software tag to this price tag. But in the purposes of the discovery, given that we have a new town administrator, it's going to take at least 3 months for some comps anyway. And so from the specs that I saw, it was $36,000. So reducing that per month rate, which that's how I came to $27,000. Now, if we go with our IT for ticketing system, we will get some savings, and I'm sure Chief Collinson would love to come back and do a budget amendment, and we could reduce his budget. I don't think that we have to prepare ourselves, and we do have some specs. And so I would like to request that the town council hear our residents. They've been asking for a code enforcement ticketing system. We heard Officer Reinhardt at our last meeting. He said he will welcome a system. It will help him manage the front office where residents can log in and they can be able to track and follow their concerns. So at this time, I mean, not to put anything in the budget, I think is not responsive to what our residents, our staff, and our businesses are saying. And it is a hefty price tag, but at this time, that's something that we need. We need some tools in that department to help us out, mitigate a lot of our issues. Yep.
Thank you, Councilmember Rout. So with that, we do have the motion on the table.
Mayor, can I just, I'm sorry to interject.
Yes, Mr. McGrory, no problem.
Speaking out of turn, but I just want to be sure you have good information. Councilmember Rout had provided me with these specs. If you just take one of those, each 2 pages. Yep, there you go. And she had sent me this costing information she had done. As you're aware, it has been a very much of a sprint for me the past 2 business days. So I apologize that this was not included in your packets, but based on a sort of back of the envelope calculations and choosing the 10 template version that you see, which is the second column from the left, our estimate was at $3,000 a month times 9 months out of 12. That's how so it was $3,000 a month times 12 months and then times 9/12 with the assumption that we would not be able to get this implemented within the first quarter of the new fiscal year. So that's how we came up with the 27,000 number. So again, I apologize that this wasn't in the packets before, but I did want you to know that there was an underpinning for where this number came from for this particular software package.
Yeah, James?
Councilmember Rout?
Yes, and I was able to, Mr. McGrory, before you came on board, I did send this information out to members of the town council individually, and so they have been in, I hope they received my email. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Rout. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't recall receiving this previously, but it could have been, like you said, because the conversation happened during the COVID pandemic, it sometime has expired. So again, we have the motion made by Councilmember Rout. Is there a second?
Seconded.
Seconded by Councilmember Lundy. Any further discussion? I will say I do agree with having a ticketed system, and I'm willing to try this, but truly, as Councilmember Rout said, I'm hoping that these expenses come in far under, because just related to other software tools, it does seem high. So maybe there are certain features that will come about out of this process, and if not, then we'll just have to, make some adjustments next year. I'll call for the vote. All in favor, let it be known by the saying of aye.
Aye.
Any nays? The ayes have it. Thank you so much. So, Councilmember Rout, I'm looking at the changes from Mr. McGrory. Okay, so Councilmember Rout confirmed she doesn't have any other items on her list. So at this time, I would like to move forward with the phone system purchase.
So, Mayor, if I could move you back to the suggested motions 1C, we have the spending authority, which is the motion to adopt ordinance 04-21, which would actually formalize the markup that you've just done in amending the budget. So the purpose of the way I've written the motion is to accomplish 2 things. One, to amend the motion that was on the floor last meeting, as I described earlier, to change the date of second reading from the 14th to the 21st of June, change the name of the witness to be my own name, and then to incorporate as Exhibit A all the changes you've just made to the document at tonight's meeting that will serve as the attachment to be attached to this ordinance. So the draft language in 1C on my suggested motions was intended to accomplish the adoption of the ordinances I've just described.
Perfect. So with that, is there a motion to amend Ordinance 04-2021 to change the date of the second reading from June 14th to June 21st, and to change the name and title of the witness to be Robert McGrory in his capacity as town administrator and thereby acting town clerk, and to attach the final FY22 budget version 6-17 as amended as the only attachment?
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Rout. Is there a second?
Seconded.
Seconded by Councilmember Lundy. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, let it be known by the saying of aye.
Aye.
Any nays? The ayes have it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.
So now moving on to the phone purchase. As was described at last meeting, my sense was, and again, I was newly appointed and trying to derive some input from the conversation at that meeting, but I had the sense that this item was deferred to the future based on the guidance that was to be received at a conference call between the Maryland Municipal League and its constituent municipalities about the federal funding. I did participate in that call with the town treasurer, and I will say the guidance provided at that meeting was mostly about how to complete the forms in anticipation of that. It really did not provide a whole lot of specific guidance on the kinds of things that could be purchased, nor the specific timing whereby funds will be received. There were some best guesses, which I won't give you secondhand information over the air because they were just that, best guesses. So that said, I think the authority that we're looking for with this motion is to authorize our proceeding. I've just received and reviewed very quickly the town's purchasing policy. So what we're looking for is the authority to move forward with this particular vendor that we recommend to solve what we deem a vitally important problem with our ability to dispatch emergency calls, among other things, and just provide customer service here at Town Hall. So that said, we are aware that there are different ways you could fund this, and with the authority provided by the council through this draft motion, we would certainly look for the best option for the town and its fiscal stability, and I think the treasurer and I would certainly work together diligently to make sure if we have external funding sources for this, we would go ahead and use those, and if we need to do it with already budgeted funds, we would do that as well. But we'd like to get this moving forward, if possible, as soon as possible.
Thank you, Mr. McGrory. And I do recall the presentation at the June 14th Town Council meeting and the discussion at the work session, but just want to, before we put the motion on the table, any questions from the council regarding the phone system?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. So what happens, so our question still is not asked. So what happens if we put this in our budget for next fiscal year and then we are not allowed to make this purchase with $7.86 million coming? So then the town, what happens to us? Can we make another budget amendment and then amend it and then purchase it?
Mr. McGrory?
Yes, thank you. So I guess I would say it is the opinion of staff that this is so important that we shouldn't wait for the answers to those questions which were not forthcoming. So I realize that's not an adequate answer to your specific question. I do believe what I did hear from that call is there are caps built into the amount that you could fund relative to a proportion of your budget. I believe, I'm stating this correctly, that the total amount of the funding, even though it's a calculated amount based on population and other factors, is diminished by 70%. It's 75% of your total budgeted amount. So in other words, the 7.8 million number we don't believe is the net amount that the town will actually receive, because that exceeds by a significant amount our budget. And so we believe that the cap on the amount we could receive is 75% of the current budget, which is just barely adopted. And I don't have the final number for that in the roll-up with the amendments you've made, but plus or minus $6.6 million. So given that variable, we believe this expenditure is important enough that we would like to have the approval to get the system started. These delays on federal guidance on parameters for controlling funding can be in the range of weeks, and they can be in the range of months, and that is not within our control. What we believe is within our control is the ability to ask the council to deploy these resources so that we can adequately receive and dispatch calls for emergency service. Chief, do you have anything to add about specifics? And I'm sorry, did that answer your question, Councilmember, to the best of my ability?
Thank you, Councilmember Rout, and thank you, Mr. McGrory, for that explanation. And Chief, as you give your remarks, could you also give us a sense, since last Monday, June 14th, and today, have you had any challenges with the current phone system that would precipitate us moving quickly to go ahead and get this new phone system?
Yes, and before I read a part of an email from one of the dispatchers, it's funny you mentioned that. I just got this email yesterday from one of our dispatchers that was working the midnight shift. And but I would say, to piggyback off of Town Administrator McGrory, the longer we prolong the process, the greater the risk for us to be able to respond to emergency calls and things like that. That being said, I got an email yesterday. It says, it's a long email, so I'll just summarize down what I think it's important. The dispatcher said, please do not get another trunk system where it searches for a line, call out. These are the analog lines that we have. More than often, not midnights, I am the only one in town hall, any of the buildings. When it does this, people try to call back on the number it calls out and are unable to reach us. All the lines should read 0400, the last four, or 6080. And she goes on to speak about the voicemails. There aren't any voicemails where we can forward calls with this current system. And then lastly, the playback function is being compromised. So the system is quickly deteriorating where we are emergency services and we aren't able to do our job proficiently. And that's what, I would just like for us, the council to really consider. And it's a good idea if we can use those funds later, but in the meantime, services are being compromised and the system is deteriorating rapidly. And if there's nothing that we can put a Band-Aid on it because it's constantly deteriorating every day. And I just got that email yesterday.
Yeah, thank you for that, Chief. Any other comments before I move forward to ask for a motion to approve the new phone system? Councilmember Rout?
Yes, Mayor James. So I brought this to the council about 9 months ago. And why we're now at a rush point, it saddens me. Because when COVID hit, we knew that we needed a telephone system then. And we should have made an adequate plan and not to be rushing, because we're at the 9th hour and they could drop the money for the COVID relief tomorrow. And so I support it, but this is really, I'm gonna just be honest, to tell my residents, tell the public, tell the businesses, this is really hard because we have an opportunity for some savings for whatever it is. And I think for the taxpayers, that's important to them as well. And we could have mitigated this by looking at our budget 9 months ago, but I do understand the timeliness in the system. The system was busting, the system been busting for 20 years. So now we're at the point where it's really busting and we really need to respond. But I definitely think that we should all use this as a learning opportunity. That when somebody on the team brings this, we should really recognize what people are saying at the beginning and try to mitigate this so we don't make haste decisions in a rush. Because honestly, this definitely feels like a rush, and I understand that the telephone system is falling apart, but it's been falling apart. Let's just be honest. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for that, Councilmember Rao. And you're right, you did help us to discuss this sometime in 2020. I do want to bring to the residents' attention, though, at that time, a member of the council also brought up that we couldn't expedite that process. We needed to go through the RFP process because the dollar amount on here, and that is what brought us to a halt. And residents, you may also recall that during that time, we were significantly short-staffed, and there were a number of projects that were on the acting town administrator's radar at that time. And so in terms of a resource perspective, in terms of trying to get the vendor out here in order to look at the system, it did create, it just created a challenge for the short staff that we had. And so respectfully, definitely understand it was urgent then, but we just had some internal hurdles that we couldn't overcome in order to move forward. We are where we are now. We followed our RFP process, as I believe it was Councilmember Lundy brought up, because that's her strength and background, and it helped us to take a step back and not make a hasty decision in 2020 and just rush into a vendor. And so I appreciate you helping the team by bringing that to everyone's attention and saying, look, we need to make sure we're following our processes, and that's been done. So with that, again, would like to move forward requesting a motion to approve the phone system purchase for ACC Telecom phone system for an estimated one-time cost of $11,432 and a monthly cost of $723, not to exceed the amount budget. Is there a motion? So moved by Councilmember Mendoza. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Lundy. I know we did discussion already, but any final comments? Okay, Councilmember Rao.
Yes, I just want us to make sure, yes, Councilwoman Lundy did bring it to us because we weren't following our procurement policy and our procurement measures, but we have to do better. We cannot make financial decisions using taxpayer dollars, waiting till the last minute when we know we have money coming. Yield back.
Thank you for that, and I agree 100%, and Councilmember Lundy helped us to not make that mistake. So with that, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, let it be known by the saying of aye. Aye. Any nays? The ayes have it. Thank you all so very much. The next item on our agenda for tonight, following the phone system purchase, is under new business, and I'll turn it over to Mr. McGrory, our town administrator.
Mayor, I believe, and in my capacity as acting town clerk, I just want to remind you that at the beginning of the meeting, you amended the agenda to get an update on grants, and so I'm happy to give that
Thank you.
update if you wish.
Still looking up here. So could you walk us through the final item under old business before we drop down to new business?
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
I have very little to say about this, and Councilmember Rout, I got your email today, and I did respond to it. Councilmember Blunt and I spoke earlier today, and in fact, one of our discussion items was to how we were going to get this process moving, because that had been delegated to a subcommittee, I believe consisting of the two of us, at your last meeting 1 week ago. Given the holiday and trying to prep for this meeting and get the budget done, et cetera, that we have not been able to have that meeting yet. I anticipate we will do that in the next couple days, and I will hope to have a written response to the council then with an update on the grants process. So I do apologize for that. We did discuss. She said it would be fine to send her scanned copies of the grant applications for review, and I've got paper copies available to me here, so I will make that an order of business for this coming week. Thank you.
Councilmember Rout had a question?
Thank you so much. So, Mr. McGrory, do we need to, does the council need to vote on those three particular items? Whatever the three particular grants to win the competitive process in committee?
Frankly, in my newness here, I'm not familiar with the custom. I do know this, going back to my historical knowledge of how things went, this would be something that staff would vet to make sure they met, complied with your policies and procedures and intentions with this process. And then I could see administratively, I could make some recommendations to you working with my subcommittee partner, Councilmember Blunt, and send those recommendations out to you. So I'm not aware the council needs to take formal action to deploy those funds. I do know Mr. Tonelli has said we do have some flexibility with the end of the fiscal year. Given that those grants were received, once I finished my evaluation working with Councilmember Blunt, we could put some written recommendations in practice dated this fiscal year and potentially still get these paid out of this fiscal year. So that would be how I would proceed, absent other direction from the council.
And Mr. McGrory, in terms of our process, we do have the recommendations come back to the council so that we can review them and vote on each award. And so, however you can work that out with Mr. Tenley is fine. If you could just let us know, because we do need to be prepared to review the information, take in your recommendations, but also have a vote from the council to award each of the applicants who are receiving those funds.
Okay, terrific.
Mayor James.
Yes, thank you.
Mayor James.
Councilmember Rout.
Thank you so much, Mayor James. I would like to just highly suggest, can we choose that special meeting today so that for the purposes of people's schedules, if we have to come back for official vote before the end of the fiscal year, if that's your pleasure?
Personally, I don't feel that would be necessary. Given the process I just outlined, I would anticipate we'd put this on the, I'd have recommendations to you and would put them on the July meeting agenda for action retroactive to the date I make the recommendations to you, which will be this fiscal year.
Okay, thank you.
Great,
Okay.
thank you,
Is
Mr.
that all right with
McGrory.
Yeah, as I say, that
Mr.
July sometimes is that, as we said before, that 13th
The
month.
13th, yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's where you make the changes.
Perfect, thank you so much. At this time, we'll now get into the next item, which is the Juneteenth holiday, turning it back over to Mr. McGrory.
Well, council members, as you're aware from our phone conversations and email communications last week, the Juneteenth holiday declaration came about very quickly among the various larger governments at the federal level and then at the state level and at the county level and other municipal jurisdictions. I was eager to look in the personnel manual and find that I had some administrative discretion to grant employees administrative leave under my authority and make a recommendation to the members of the council that you approve Juneteenth as a holiday at a future meeting. So I'm asking in this motion, and I believe as I say this, I should make sure there's language in here to make this motion retroactive to last Friday, if you would do that. And so I did put forth a draft motion, and the reason for putting this on the special meeting agenda as opposed to just waiting and have it be retroactive, there would be a significant personnel burden in terms of recharacterizing all the timesheets, recalculating holiday pay, doing that for a prior fiscal year, which by the time you would act in July would be next fiscal year. So again, my hope was by acting on this tonight, retroactive to last Friday, we could have everything all set up for the payroll run. Our police officers would get holiday pay for those who worked on that holiday, and the non-sworn staff, non-emergency staff would be able to get holiday pay or holiday leave as opposed to administrative leave. So that was the goal of this. But again, I do recommend that you add on here to make this retroactive to last Friday, the date of which is?
June 18th.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
And thank you for being so quick to respond to that. I think all of us were relieved when we saw the congressional support for this, the support from the administration as well. It's a long time overdue, and so we were significantly happy to be able to just take the time to do some things to honor truly the end of slavery. As word reached Galveston, Texas, 2.5 years after President Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. And so with that, I would ask for a motion to amend the Town of Bladensburg Personnel Manual as previously adopted in May 2019 to change Section 3E, legal holidays, by adding the word Juneteenth to the list of paid holidays and to direct that Juneteenth holiday will henceforth be celebrated at the same time as it is celebrated by the government of the United States, and we make this motion retroactive to June 18th. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Mendoza. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Rout. Any discussion?
Yes.
Councilmember Rout.
Yes, I'm so glad, Bladensburg proud that we are doing this as a town council. And doing my research of Bladensburg when I was selecting a place where I purchased my first home, it saddened me that Bladensburg, we actually have property where slaves actually served their slave master. And I feel like this is timely, given the state of where we are in our national history, recognizing African Americans and their sacrifice that they've done, and here in the town of Bladensburg, recognizing that it's a possibility that our slaves did not even know that they were free during this day. And so I am honored to vote affirmatively for this, adding this federal holiday, and following through our governor and our Senate and our leadership in the White House. You're right.
Thank you, Councilmember Rout. And so the motion has been made by Councilmember Mendoza, seconded by Councilmember Rout. I'll now call for the vote. All in favor, let it be known by the saying of aye. Aye. Any nays? The ayes have it. Thank you so much. And ladies and gentlemen, that takes us to the end of tonight's agenda. May I have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Councilmember Mendoza. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Rout. I'll now call for the vote. All in favor, let it be known by the saying of aye. Aye. Any nays? The ayes have it. Thank you so much. We're adjourned. Good night, everyone.